Welcome, folks, to episode number 44 of the No Conference for Old Men podcast where three old guys are talking Houston Cougars basketball with a bit of Big 12 coverage added in as well, and proud members of the GoCoogs.com network, the undisputed number one Houston Cougars content provider. We're here today with all three of the old men, Tom Lydiak, former coach, Bill Walker, former player, and myself, Steve Chang, analytics guy for this episode. And we will attempt to publish our first episode with video in this installment for those that follow us via YouTube. But we'll see how things go during editing after we've done here today. Well, a huge Arizona swing this past week where UH won 2 games in Arizona in extending our sole position of first in the Big 12 standings over Arizona after winning 62-58 at Arizona and turning around 3 days later to trash ASU 80-65 in another game that was not quite as close as the score would indicate. Now comes definitively the toughest week on our schedule with a big ESPN Gameday visit this Saturday as we host Iowa State, followed by a quick turnaround Big Monday road game versus Tech to try to even the series this season. In the critical win over Arizona, Houston showed a little bit more maturity in the tight game between two great defenses, while ASU game was more a display of Houston's newfound elite offense this season in just burying ASU in a deluge of shot making throughout the game. We also saw the selection committee in the in-season reveal of the current top 16 seeds with brackets, where our Cougars found themselves at number 8 as the final number 2 seed in the West region paired with Florida. So the special topic this week is going to be around an instant reaction by the old man on how we feel about the selection committee's rankings and placement. So let's get into it. In dissecting our 2 critical wins this week, let's begin with post-game analyses of the hard-nosed back-and-forth win over Arizona on the road. Then we'll transition to your thoughts on the Super Tuesday destruction of Arizona State. Let's start with you first, Tom. What were some of your thoughts from a coach's perspective in the Arizona game?
First off, the game was on the road. McHale Center was hopping. That's a tough place to play and get a win. But another tough, gritty win by our Coogs. One stat that kind of hopped out to me is we still won and we only got like 3 offensive rebounds. I think the official stats say we have 6, but every time I think you miss a free throw, I think they correct you to an offensive rebound. So only 3 offensive rebounds. Both teams didn't shoot very well from three-point land. Arizona continued their shooting woes from the K-State game. They were 5 for 23. We were 5 for 17. Emmanuel couldn't hit a bull in the ass from 5 feet. I think he was 0 for 6 from three-point land. But, they were open looks. And I still think he was rusty from the effects of the foot because those are shots that normally go down. Before his foot injury, I think he was shooting close to 50%. So his percentages have gone down since that foot injury. Thank God the night he got back on track. But some open shots didn't fall. I think we were down by 5 at halftime. Another key here is Arizona's starting lineup. I'll get back to Tommy Lloyd here real quick.
Yeah.
In the past, the knock on Arizona has always been a pretty offensive. Tommy Lloyd coming from the Mark Fee background, a lot of European concept, and their offense always pretty to watch. And the knock on them was they were soft, but that's not the case this year. Arizona's playing with the toughness that hasn't been seen in a Tommy Lloyd team. So give credit to Arizona. They were up 48-41. And then Kelvin called a timeout, made some substitutions. We have Milo's Jawan and JoJo coming in, and then Sharp, Wilson, and Francis came out. And then that's when we made a run toward the end. Magic Johnson calls this a winning time. He used to call that winning time. The old knock on the NBA was that you could always watch the last 2 minutes of the game and see the whole game. Okay, so tough win for the Cougs. I think that was our 11th straight road game. Another thing I'd like to point out is the starting lineup for Arizona. They started Trey Townsend with Awaka in the front court. Awaka here, he had 0 points. He had 3 fouls. He only played 15 minutes. I was kind of surprised that he didn't play more than that. I do think Arizona's better with Townsend out of there, and I think they're better with Waka and Visar together in the lineup. And later on, when we talk about the Arizona-Baylor game, we can mention that. Also think they're better with Carter Bryant in there instead of Delorso. They're more athletic on defense, and then also more dynamic on offense. Make a long story short, just another quintessential Houston Cougar win win on the road. You know, it wasn't pretty, but who cares? Kelvin always says they don't put an asterisk or they don't color pictures next to the win. Just a tough win on the road. Another Big 12 win for the Cougs.
Nice. I thought it was pretty. Hey, Bill, how about your views of the Arizona win from a player's perspective?
Yeah, before I get into that, I just want to take 1 minute, hopefully just one quick minute, to mention something that Steve, you and I have talked about, and we should have brought this up a couple weeks ago, and we didn't. But to a former Phi Slamma Jamma player, just wanted to say rest in peace, Alvin Franklin.
Oh, yeah.
I met Alvin and Ricky Winslow in the very first class I took, the first morning class when I first transferred to U of H, and it was a hotel and restaurant class, and we had to get into groups of 4 to do a project. And I was like, you know what? Whether I get an A on this project, whether I fail it, whether I have to do all the work, none of the work, it doesn't matter. I want to be with the 2 Phi Slamma Jamma guys. And so I got into a group with them, and Alvin was really the one I connected with, and had another class with him. Occasionally over at Hoffines would shoot around with him, and just a really, really good guy, starting point guard on one of the Final Four teams, the Final Four team against Georgetown. So I just want to say, rest in peace, Alvin, and our thoughts go out to his family.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for mentioning that, Bill.
Yeah. Arizona, this win and Tech's loss to TCU have us in really, and I wrote this down prior to ASU, but have us in really good shape going into ASU. And then a few tough games. And by really good shape, I don't mean really good shape for second place in the conference. Second place finish, as someone on this podcast recently predicted us to end up in. So I felt I'd be remiss if I didn't address that. But we played great D. We'll start with the first half. We played great D in the first half. We were down 5, 30-25, really due to a putrid half offensively. Sharp was just off. But nobody did a whole lot of scoring in the first half, 25 points, and we were out rebounded in that first half, 23-15, including 8 Arizona offensive boards. And that's something that I'd highlighted as kind of a key when we previewed the game. Second half, the D again was outstanding. We outscored Arizona 37-28. Uzan, and I mentioned him, I feel like weekly. Uzan was again the MVP, going 8 of 12 from the field, scored 19 points, dished out 5 assists, and in 38 minutes, 0 turnovers. Although I thought, I'm surprised that they didn't credit him with 1 turnover, because late in the game, and
out of bounds game,
I wanted to jump through the TV. He held the ball and didn't inbound it under our basket. I was surprised that's not considered a turnover, but in any event,
hey, guys, Bill,
that would have been his only one. Yeah.
Real quick interjection here. Some of you guys who are on the Veer know a guy named Randy. Randy was at that game right behind the bench, and he said when Milos didn't throw that ball in, he turned to one of his staff members and said that sometimes he's afraid to fail. He was afraid to fail to make a pass that might get a turnover. So I thought that was a interesting tidbit there.
Well, that's an interesting way to think about it, because if you don't inbound it, it's a guaranteed turnover. Yeah. So in any event, it'll assume that is a turnover, which I thought it was. It's still 1 turnover in 38 minutes. So I mean, he's just exceptional with the ball and running the team. The other star of this game was clearly Cryer, 6 of 12 from the field, 15 points. He wanted the ball toward the end of the game. He played aggressively. He hit his shots. He wanted to make sure we didn't win. We did win. We didn't lose. And during our run, he just ensured that we would maintain our lead and that we would not relinquish it. So I thought he was great. Not a lot of big stats for other players, but Arsenault and Roberts did hit huge free throws late to help us maintain that lead. And on the other side, Love and their other guard, KJ Lewis, well, one of their other guards, were their leaders. And even though Love committed 5 turnovers, which isn't entirely unheard of, and not surprisingly took more shots than anyone on their team. And then Tom, to your point, I had this written down as well. Townsend and Obaka were absolutely non-existent for the game. Townsend hit 1 3, and that was it for them. 3 points for the entire game. Owaka did nothing, and it was, in the end, it was a tough atmosphere, a really good road win, and we showed that. I think moving forward, we are definitely the better team and the best team in the Big 12.
Yeah, agreed. From an analytics perspective, looking at this Arizona game, this was 2 heavyweights in the Big 12 slugging it out. With these 2 teams atop the conference standings and with arguably the 2 best defenses in the league, it was no surprise that on offense, it was tough sledding for both teams, especially from 3-point range, where Arizona shot 22% and UH shot 29%. With a very loud and boisterous crowd on hand, UH really showed its maturity in being able to continue to fight and keep things close, where Arizona took the lead early and was on the verge of blowing things open multiple times in the first half. That was the half that they had good Caleb Love. Then it was the second half where we started to chip away, pulling even at 32 all at the 17:02 mark. Arizona then made another run, up 7 at the 9:10 mark, but a 16-1 run by our Coogs put the team up for good as we closed things out. Defensively, honestly, both teams played extremely well across the board, keeping both teams below their norms on the offensive side of things. Key stat of the day that made the ultimate difference was around turnovers, where we stayed calm on the road for turnovers on 11% of our possessions, where Arizona ended up with 18% turnovers for the game. Caleb Love, for the final 9 minutes and 10 seconds of the game, when we made our comeback and the game was decided, guess what he had? 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 1 turnover, while Uzan and Cryer took turns scoring on him. Bad Caleb Love in the second half. Now for the Super Tuesday showdown versus Arizona State, short turnaround for this game, but we were able to fly the team back for maximum rest between games, which definitely helped with recovery. And this was no contest from the start in the 80-65 win. Let's begin with you first, Bill. What were your quick thoughts from a player's perspective versus ASU?
Well, I always take notes when I'm watching the game on TV, and then I sort of incorporate them into what I intend to say. And my first note was, and I didn't yell it at the TV, but I kind of said it: Tugler, don't play D with your hands. He's super athletic. He's an extremely aggressive player, and he is going to commit fouls because of his aggressiveness, no doubt about it. But I just feel like he has to cut down on the dumb fouls when he's reaching, and it's not the real aggressive fouls. It's the cheap ones. And this game, it didn't matter much at all, but it is going to matter when we get into the tournament and we go up against better teams than Arizona State. The guys I thought that came out really aggressively for us were, as usual, Uzan, Cryer, and Francis when he came in to substitute for Tugler. Yeah, I noticed right away that Arizona was absolutely one and done. There were no second chance points for them. Missed the shot, that was it. Get back on defense because we're going to absolutely clean up the boards. And for the game, we out-rebounded them 36-25. 25 rebounds is pretty mediocre. Part of that has to do with the fact that we shot incredibly well. At half, we shot 54.6% from the field while committing only 3 turnovers to their 7, and we were up 16. I had one thought at halftime, well, actually during the first half, on our good friend Bobby Hurley. If his team gets outplayed, if they get out hustled, if they're just beaten, it seems like it can't be on him or his players. It must be the refs. And they're second leading scorer in this game, their leading scorer for the season, BJ Freeman. He did score 17 and played all right. He shot an air ball at one point in the first half. He made absolutely zero effort to get back on D, and we went down and scored. Both announcers talked about it. They saw it and they commented on it. At the same time that they were talking about it, the camera focused on Hurley, who was screaming at the officials. And I'm not sure why, because the air ball, there was no one close to fouling Freeman. And so I don't know what he was, maybe it was something previous to that, but the announcers were all over Freeman. Hurley certainly was not. Now I will give Hurley some respect. After the game, he had said that a ton of teams preach culture and talk about how great their culture is. He had mentioned that U of H absolutely exemplifies just phenomenal culture. So that was a nice comment from him. Obviously an accurate comment, but nice thing for him to say, and appreciated. I thought Wilson played with great energy and played with great production off the bench, and I thought Uzan, Roberts, Cryer were aggressive and played really well throughout the entire game. But my game ball for this one goes to Sharp. Based on the way he's shot and played recent and being affected by the foot, it was nice to see him, 17 points, 4 boards, 2 steals, 4 of 7 from 3. He needed that personally, and U of H needs that going forward. And all I'll say is not so much from Mercy.
Yeah, definitely not.
One last thing, and nothing to do with the game directly, but maybe our number 2 recruiting class isn't entirely complete. 5-star Koa Pete, who's from Arizona, apparently, I think he was at one of the games. They had mentioned that he had watched them both, and both of the Arizona sweep. And, hopefully that bodes well for Calvin and U of H's 2025, 2026 front line.
Yeah, honestly, I think he's interested in joining the Cougars, but it's going to be heavily dependent on whether Tugler comes back or not. If Tugler comes back, I don't think there's any way Koa Pete signs with us, but that's just my opinion. Tom, how about you from a coach's perspective on the game?
Well, first thing I'll respond to Bill talking about the guy shooting the air ball. They come down and then Hurley's just chirping at the referees. My opinion, I just think he's afraid to coach his team. Instead of yanking the guy who shot the air ball or giving an earful, he just transfers his ire and his anger onto the referee. In this day and age with the way sports are, there's a lot of coaches that are afraid to coach their team because they're afraid of guys transferring out. But anyway, I don't know what was more entertaining, watching Bobby Hurley or watching the game. The guy looks miserable all the time, by the way. Anyway, Bill, you mentioned JoJo, getting that second foul. I think he had 4 of his 5 fouls. I know one was a reach in, 2 were push-offs on offensive rebounds, and then another one was an illegal screen. Kelvin talked about that on one of his radio shows a couple of weeks ago about JoJo doing something like they do what's called gets, where a guard will throw the ball to a big, the guard will follow his pass, and then he'll get it back from the big, and then JoJo will turn his body and stick his butt out, and then get called for an offensive foul. But Bill, you're absolutely right. One of these days, it's going to come back and bite us in the ass when we need JoJo. I thought early in the season he had a propensity for reaching in and playing too much with his hands, as did all our big men. And for a while there, it looked like he cleaned it up, but now he's kind of reverting right back. And I put this down here too in my notes. It was 18-12 was 18 minutes and 12 seconds left in the first half when he picked up that second foul and had to go to the bench and be an assistant coach. Thank God for JVA, though. He comes in and he's, JVA is playing really well.
He is
6 for 6 from the free throw line. Not ready to call him Rick Barry yet, but it's not quite automatic yet, but it's a lot better than flip a coin. Let's just hope he makes 1 out of 2. And Kelvin mentioned this on his radio show last night that JVA he's putting in the time, before practice, after practice.
I mean,
Steve,
Tom,
say something?
Yeah, the form looks good on his free throws. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this season, for the season, he's at like 76% free throw line.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Which is amazing, because there was a time not too long ago, if he got fouled, it was a turnover, because he was going to probably miss the front end of a 1-on-1 and maybe only make 1 or 2 on a shooting foul.
Yeah, he's worked hard at it.
It was interesting because as soon as JoJo came out and JVA came in, he went to the basket and just got blasted. Yeah. Thankfully, he was able to get up and he wasn't hurt. But I think we had a 20-point lead in the first half, going to halftime with a 16-point lead. Yeah. We blow the game open. I think we were up to a 23-point lead. And then Kelvin puts in Said, Mercy, and KJ in. And that Hurley starts pressing, with his starting 5 in there. It's like Kelvin waved the white flag, put your son in the game, put those other guys in the game. So anyway, the lead shrinks to 12, and Kelvin does one of these, like he's signaling to, I think it was LJ and Los to get back in the game. And as a head coach, I've been in that situation before where you want to get some guys in the game, you got to lead. And then with 1 minute left, you got to put the starters back in. And that just, I don't know how Kelvin felt about it, but sometimes it almost feels like he lost the game when that happened. So the bench guys, when you come in, here's your chance.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's your chance here. If you want more playing time, don't blow a 23-point lead. Have coach have to put his starters back in. Yep. But overall, another great win. What was it, 80-65? 12, I think it's 12 consecutive road wins now.
And
that's just an amazing stat.
Yeah, it's Big 12 record, right?
Yeah,
Big 12 record for consecutive road wins. So incredible.
I believe so. And Kelvin on his radio show again, I think the question was, how are you able to win on the road? And he just said, tough players, but especially older, mature, and experienced players. Which brings up the question, next year we're gonna have 3 freshmen, and hopefully we bring back a bunch of veterans, because to win on the road, you have to have that experience. Young teams, it's tough. It's tough to go on the road and play, but you mix them in with those veterans, and we're gonna be all right.
Yeah. For this game on offense, this was an extremely hot shooting night for our Coogs. And keep in mind that ASU was the 41st adjusted defensive efficiency team in the country coming in, and the 34th team in the country at defending the 3-point line. Honestly, we just carved them up, ending up at over 58% effective field goal percentage while shooting 48% from 3-point range, guys. Just crazy. On defense, though, in the end, ASU shot close to their norms for the game. The vast majority of their made buckets were after the game was no longer in doubt. And we'll get into that a little bit later on in this episode when we talk about the projected seedings for the tourney and some of the nuances around the various metrics that we're measuring teams with. But a much more straightforward win versus ASU than I expected. Then pair that win with Tech's loss last night to TCU, and we are now 2 games up on Arizona and 3 games up on Tech in Iowa State in the Big 12 standings with 5 games to go. Now let's get to Houston's toughest pair of games for the season coming up, hosting Iowa State on game day Saturday first, and then at Tech for a big Monday showdown. Let's provide a quick preview and cover both games together. Bill, you can go first from a player's perspective on both games.
Okay. Saturday, early game, 11 o'clock ESPN. State is 21-5, 11-4 in the Big 12. They after their losing streak, they kind of plummeted, but they're back up to a tie for third. We all kind of initially predicted them to battle us for the Big 12 title, and not one person on this podcast, certainly not me, even predicted ISU to to be better than Baylor. The 3-game losing streak included a miracle loss at Arizona, a bad loss at Kansas, and then the shocking one, the blowout loss at home against Kansas State.
Yeah.
And so, they're sitting where they are. It's a tough 3-game losing streak, and it's going to mean that they're not going to challenge for the Big 12 title. Well, last I looked, they were still number 9 in Ken Palm. We're 3, and the tournament selection committee. And I'm going to just say, in its infinite wisdom, because I'm a little perplexed at their rankings, but we'll get to that, has Iowa State at 9, only 1 spot behind us, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Both, I'm assuming, will rise in those rankings, especially us. Iowa State has traditionally been a tough defensive team, similar to us, but with some highly offensive players, or maybe I should rephrase that as good offensive players. I don't know how offensive they are, but really added to the playing mix this year. ISU is scoring over 81 points per game. They're led, as they were last year, by an exceptional backcourt, which is really kind of expanded from 2 to 3 this year. Taman Lipsey runs the show. He's a slightly lesser athletic version of Jamal Shed, 6'1" junior point guard, 10.5 points, just under 3 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals, 2 turnovers. He's a decent shooter, but not necessarily great. But if you leave him alone, he will hit shots, and he's always a threat. He's a great defensive player. Keyshawn Gilbert is their shooting guard, 6'4", leads them in minutes at 32 a game, 14 points, almost 4 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 3.2 turnovers, which is a ton. He's quick, and he can shoot. Then we have Curtis Jones, who came a couple years ago from the University of Buffalo. He's their leading scorer, 17 points, 4.5 boards, and he shoots 37% from 3. Obviously a good scorer. He's been a little up and down recently, but those 3 are the keys for U of H to defend, to make sure that we win that game, which we will. Their front court consists, there are several players, but there are really only 2 to kind of focus on. One's Joshua Jefferson, the 6'9" junior who came in from St. Mary's. He's fit in really well with them, 13 points, 8 boards, few assists, couple steals, couple turnovers. But he scores inside and out. And then finally we have our mortal enemy from last year who's now healthy, Milan Momcilovic, the 6'8" sophomore. And I've always got to mention this, from just outside of Milwaukee. And he's been hurt. He's only played 19 games, but he's back. He's healthy. And in their recent win over mighty Colorado, Momcilovic played 31 minutes. He scored 13 points in the 31 minutes. He didn't shoot very well, but he got to the free throw line. In any event, he's back. The other starter is 6'11" Deshaun Jackson, and he's a load, and he plays entirely inside. State had their slump, but they seem to have righted the ship, which is too bad coming into the game with us. But I'm not sure that it's going to matter. We need to defend both the perimeter and the dribble penetration from their guards. That, I think, is critical. I think we can turn them over. I think they can tend to get a little sloppy with the ball, especially Gilbert. And offensively, we need to protect the ball because their guards are good at creating turnovers. We need to move the ball effectively like we have, and we need to ride Juwan inside. And then if they sag down on him, they double him, monster him, whatever, we need to hit threes, especially when we get open shots. And Uzan needs to just continue his above solid play running the team. ISU's become a high-scoring team. We need to control the tempo in this game, and I think we will. And at Fertitta, I see us winning 68-61.
Okay, awesome. How about the Tech game?
Okay. Following ISU, I mean, this is a tough 2-game stretch. We follow with Tech, which is Monday, ESPN in Lubbock. Tech's tied for third with ISU at 11-4, 20-6 overall. Heading into this week, Tech, like ISU, was a projected 3 seed in the NCAAs. That may not remain the case, as Tech lost a couple of nights ago to lowly TCU, 69-66, which was,
It's beautiful.
it was shocking. Well, maybe I prefer your term, Steve. I was stunned.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in that game, oddly enough, Tech stars played pretty well.
Yeah.
Toppin of the kick between Tugler's legs and the flagrant 2 ejection, he scored 14, grabbed 11 boards. Darian Williams was 9 of 15 for 21 points, and Chance McMillan was 7 of 10 from the field, including 5 of 7 from 3 for 19 points. And yet they still lost to TCU. And I think the one player who played horribly for them, who really took us apart, was their point guard, Elijah Hawkins. Yeah. He did dish out an impressive 9 assists versus TCU, which is really his forte, but he shot 2 of 6 from the field and scored 4 points. Didn't get to the line. We don't need him dishing out 9 assists, certainly, but I'd be thrilled with 2 of 6 from the field and 4 points and no free throw against us. That would be just fine. Also, Tech shot only 8 total free throws versus TCU. And if you recall, after the mess with Toppin and Tugler, the officiating just, I don't know how to describe it. I'll just say questionable. They shot 34 free throws in the game against us. And granted, the game went to overtime at 72. And it would have been probably in the, well, not probably, it would have been in the 60s, except for their late flurry scoring and, of course, fouls when Tech was down. There are a lot of dynamics in play in this game. Can we control tempo? Can we defend their perimeter, not foul, and handle their guards off the dribble? I hate to say this, and I hate to even focus on it, but the officials could very likely play a big role in how this game is played. And it's a fine line, but if we remain aggressive but disciplined, meaning no of the dumb fouls that I've mentioned and Tom, you had mentioned, I think we'll be just fine. We work Roberts inside, just like we did in the Tech game where we kept going to him over and over, and he kept scoring over and over. We get solid production out of a healthy Sharp, and I think we're in business. Tech almost lost at home to Arizona State just recently. Then they did lose at TCU. So they're a little up and down right now. I think we go in there, and we also win this game by 7, just like Iowa State. I think we win 73-66. And, a couple of consecutive 7-point victories for us.
That would be golden if it happens. How about you, Tom, from a coach's perspective for both games?
I'm with Bill. I think we win both of these. They're going to be tough. They're going to be tough games. I don't know if Kelvin's
great minds think alike.
That's right.
Yeah. I don't. Kelvin probably is not into revenge, but there's a lot of guys on our team that probably remember that 28-point drubbing to Iowa State in the worthless, useless Big 12 tournament, and Iowa State people, we won the Big 12. We won the conference. No, you didn't. You won a tournament that very few people care about.
Doesn't matter.
Anyway, they got Momcilovic back. Like Bill said, they had their struggles there. I'm not sure if their struggles were all related to not having Momcilovic. Iowa State's been an interesting team this year. They're more of an offensive team than they were the past couple of years. Bill said they averaged like 81 points a game. If you look on paper, they lost Trey King and Rob Jones in the front court, and then they added Jefferson from St. Mary's and then Deshaun Jackson from Charlotte. And on paper, that's an upgrade. However, it might not be an upgrade as far as toughness and defense go. So they've been an interesting team this year, and we'll just have to see how it goes on Saturday. But I'm predicting a U of H win here.
Nice.
Big key is Emmanuel hitting some shots again. That opens up a lot of stuff for us offensively. Milo's, he has experience playing against Iowa State when he played for OU, so he's familiar with Coach Otz's defensive system, so there won't be any surprise there. Last year, I was at that game in Ames where we just got it's like we were shell shocked.
Yeah,
we'd never played in Ames before, never played a TJ team, and it was like the first time we ever got trapped before, and remember we were down like 14-0 before Emmanuel hit one from Fort Dodge to make it like 14-3.
Yeah.
But anyway, two great programs, two really tough teams. Nothing's going to be easy. I think it'll come down to, like I mentioned earlier, Magic Johnson, in winning time. And we just seem to have a propensity late in the game for somebody to hit some key shots, whether it's LJ, whether it's a Milos, or whether it's Jawan. So that's the Iowa State game. And plus, that game's on a Saturday. And I go to church on Sunday, and we'll have to face some Iowa State fans there. So come on, Coogs. Let's do it.
Awesome. I love that.
Because I had to hear them last year after they beat us in the Big 12 conference tournament. And I was trying to tell them, what would you rather have?
Yeah.
Would you rather have a 15-3 record and win the conference by 2 or 3 games over a span of like 2.5 months, or win this conference tournament that only bubble teams and you care about? More than half the crowd was Iowa State fans. Going to Texas Tech, another game. If people are into revenge, here's a revenge game for us. The first time we played them, the karate kick to JoJo. And by the way, it's like, did anybody ever care whether JoJo was all right after that scissors kick in the groin?
Nope.
Nobody ever was concerned about JoJo. He's the real victim there. The guy just got kicked in the Netherlands, and all of a sudden the focus was on Toppin getting kicked out. And Bill, I agree with you here. I think the officials realized they made a mistake, and they wanted to make sure that the reffing wasn't the reason that Texas Tech lost after kicking out their best player. Nothing really egregious. I really like to see another angle of that 3-point shot attempt where they said, I think Malik, they said fouled, but then there's only one view of that. It's from the side, but they call a foul on that. And that other one where Elijah
Hawkins.
Where he spun on Malik, and it looks like he just fell, and they called a foul. That was 5 points right there after we had that 5-point lead, and they tied it up. Anyway, back to the game on, is it Monday?
Yep, big Monday.
Monday game?
Yep.
Quick turnaround. The people in Lubbock, what's their arena called? I'm not sure what it's called, but they're going to be in a froth. They're going to be foaming at the mouth. They'll be their Super Bowl. If they win this game, they'll think they invented basketball. But I'm predicting we go in there. We're on a roll, and I think we come out there with a win.
Nice.
We'll have to do a great job on Toppin. Toppin's really tough. Got to get it on their shooters. Tech's a tough team.
They are.
But we're tougher.
Nice.
They had a couple of perimeter guys really step up and shoot well against us at Fertitta Center.
Out of their minds.
It's not going to be, one, that I don't think they shoot as well. Two, it's going to be an entirely different game because Toppin's going to be playing unless he does the same thing. So it's going to be an entirely different style of play in this game.
Completely. And last year when we played Tech, I'll give you an example. Kerwin Walton, he didn't make anything against us in a couple of games last year. And then, of course, he made everything at Fertitta.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. So from an analytics perspective, Iowa State's going to be a big-time challenge, being much more balanced this season, as you guys had mentioned. They're number 9th now in KenPom and are 11-4 in conference play. ISU is number 18th in adjusted offensive efficiency and number 12th in adjusted defensive efficiency in KenPom, while we're now number 7 in adjusted offensive efficiency and holding steady at number 3 in adjusted defensive efficiency. So this will be another battle of heavyweights in the Big 12 with both elite and balanced teams. ISU, surprisingly for a team rated so high on both sides of the ball, they don't have a lot of grain from an advanced analytics, detailed statistics profile. And we define that by being top 40 in the country in specific stats. But they're good or high good across the board this season. On offense, they're a far better shooting team this season, number 55 in effective field goal percentage, and particularly strong near the rim at number 43 in 2-point percentage shooting. ISU is also heavily reliant on free throws to generate offense this year, ranking 55th in free throws as a percentage of offense. On D, like last season, ISU relies heavily on steals, ranking 14th in the country, and turning teams over, ranked 18th in turnover percentage D. But as we know, our strengths on offense and defense run counter to ISU's strengths, where we rank 4th in 2-point percentage D and number 11th in turnover percentage on offense. So it's going to be strength versus strength in this matchup, with whomever is able to impose their will winning in the end. But like we discussed last episode, we're no longer a one-trick pony on both sides of the ball. As the number 6 team in 3-point percentage offense, expect us to test their mediocre 3-point D. And where ISU can be careless with the ball at times, expect our number 11th turnover percentage D to disrupt their offensive flow. And remember, folks, this one's at home. Based on the metrics, this is projected to be a 6-point win at home for the Coogs. From KenPom, I view this as ISU's Super Bowl game, given they are likely out of the conference title chase. So I'm predicting a closer 70-64 6-point win for the Cougs. And then for the Tech game, I don't know, trying to return the favor for our current only Big 12 loss so far this season. Tech's been stellar this season, but are coming off a 3-point loss at TCU, as we talked about. Even after that loss, they're still coming in at a dangerous number 8 in KenPom. They're 11th in adjusted offensive efficiency and number 35 in adjusted defensive efficiency in KenPom. So it will be a challenge to contain their offense on the road in Lubbock. On offense, Tech is an exceptionally great shooting team. They're currently 16th in effective field goal percentage in KenPom and strong from both 3 as well as 2-point range. In addition, they also offensive rebound their few misses, ranking 39th in offensive rebound rate. Really no weaknesses on offense except for a tendency to sometimes turn the ball over like they did with TCU. So if we stay true to our defensive principles, we'll need to take advantage of those turnover opportunities for transition buckets. On D, Tech is good all around, not exceptional at anything. Where we can take advantage is at the 3-point line, where Tech is 116th in 3-point percentage D, as well as right at the rim, where they are terrible at blocking shots, ranking 262nd. So in this rematch, expect us to spread them out on the arc for threes, balanced with heavy doses of Roberts in the post. I also expect Arsenault to have a nice rebound game for this one. Based on the metrics, this is projected to be a 1-point win on the road for the Cougs by KenPom. I think our team is going to be zeroed in for this game, given what happened last time at Fertitta. So I actually think we get revenge with a bigger 67-63 4-point win. So since the selection committee came out with their early reveal top 16 seed projections for the tourney, how about we all weigh in on how we felt with the committee's number 8 overall ranking for Houston, as well as being placed as the number 2 seed in the West, along with number 1 seed Florida, and number 3 Kentucky, and number 4 Michigan. Tom, what's your take on the seeding as well as the placement? You upset? How do you like the bracket, I guess, with Florida, and are we underappreciated at this point?
Personally, I don't mind us being a 2. When you got that 1, it seems like it's a bullseye on us. If you're going to win the national championship, you're going to have to beat really good teams, and yeah. I'm okay with the 2. If we continue playing like we do, I would be upset if we were a 3. I do know there's a lot of people talking about SEC bias. Some people are talking about all 4 seeds and being SEC, blah, 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 and all this. Yep. Kind of like the SEC was in football. But like I said, I'm okay with a 2. A lot of times when it comes to March Madness NCAA tournament, it's not your seed. It is the matchup and the style of play of the team that you're going to play. So that part is kind of a crapshoot. I mean, I don't think the NCAA tournament committee is going to go in there and say, hey, U of H is a number 1 seed. but this is a bad matchup for them if we put them in their bracket. So a little bit has to do with luck as far as like injuries go, and then the luck of the draw, who you end up playing. There's always upsets, so once the bracket comes out, you know who you're going to play in the first game, but after that, it's a crapshoot. So yeah, style of play is huge when you go into the tournament.
So Tom, then, and granted, right, this isn't the real bracket, but how do you like the matchup with Florida as a 1 seed, potentially, if this were to come to fruition, as well as Kentucky in the Elite Eight? How do you think we match up then?
I'd love to see us play Kentucky because I think we're
Yeah,
a lot better team than them. I think we're a lot tougher than them.
yeah, completely agree.
Florida has had some shootouts, games. I'd be more concerned playing a team that's kind of like a mirror image of us rather than some teams. I wouldn't be afraid to play because you're going to get shots, and it's just a question of whether you make them or not. Some teams are really, really good defensively, and open shots are tougher to come by. So if I had my druthers, I'd rather go up against a team that's more offensive centric than more like a mirror image of us.
Okay. Okay, cool. How about you, Bill, from the player's perspective?
Well, it's their first release, so I don't really care. I always talk about how the rankings don't really matter to me until it becomes Selection Sunday. Now, I will.
Well, be careful, Bill, because historically speaking, reveals they don't change much. They do not change much. They were showing statistics around how much it changes. You might have one or two fall off at the end and maybe a little bit of movement between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, but it doesn't change much.
Well, maybe, but Alabama just lost at home to Auburn, and they've got to play Auburn again. So there's going to be another loss for them.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe they play them a third time in the SEC tournament and lose 3 times.
Yep.
But you've got Auburn, you've got Alabama, you've got Florida, and you've got Tennessee for the top 5. A bunch of them are going to be playing each other. They're still scheduled. So there are going to be some losses with those top SEC teams. A&M is number 6 and we're number 8. And that, while once again, the rankings right now are the rankings, but I've got to imagine that the national problem that we've had with fentanyl clearly made it to the committee. How we're 8 and A&M is 6 is beyond me, but A&M fortunately proved me right and lost. Number 7 ahead of us is Purdue. They lost at home to Wisconsin. But there are a lot of things about this that don't make a ton of sense. I mean, if the draw played out the way that they've currently got it, I guess I'm okay with it. If I'm Tennessee, I'd be livid. And I'm not sure why. I thought that when they put their bracket out like this, I thought, and they do their top 16, I thought they typically 1-4, 1-4, 2-3, whatever, or 1. If you go to quarterfinals, 1-8, 2-7, 3-6, 4-5. If we're the number 8 team, why would we in the Elite 8 be playing the number 4 team? Why wouldn't we be playing the number 1 team? And I don't know if that has to do with, but if that's how the bracket turned out, I'd be perfectly okay with it. I'd be livid if I was Tennessee and I ended up the number 5 team, and I wasn't playing Florida, the number 4 team, and I'm playing, a much higher seeded team. Quite honestly, if this is generally how it plays out, I want to play Duke. I think Duke is overrated. I think they're playing in one of the worst conferences in the country. I think that this may be the worst year historically in the ACC. I don't think Duke's beaten. They did beat Auburn early in the year by a point, but I'd love to be in the same region as Duke. That's about it. I will say, because of the games that got played with each other, no chance, none that there are 4 SEC seeds, top seeds, the top 4. I've had this debate with a couple others. There is no chance. I would bet my life on that. And
yeah, I would agree. I mean, especially with Duke, no one's going to stop Duke in the
yeah,
ACC, like you
that's
said.
exactly right. They've got no competition. They lost to Clemson, but they're just far superior to anyone in the ACC. So I don't expect them to lose again. And I think some of these teams that are, well, at least a few of them that are ahead of us right now, and I've mentioned Purdue and A&M, but even like I said, Alabama and Florida and Tennessee, they're all going to suffer losses down the stretch. That's a byproduct of the SEC being so good and so top heavy. They're going to be playing each other, and some of those teams are going to probably have multiple losses down the stretch. So I think I want us to be a 1 seed. It's not going to kill me if we're a 2, but I want us to be a 1 seed, and I still absolutely think we will be because of some of the SEC attrition.
Okay. So for me, viewed strictly from an advanced analytics perspective, obviously I was disappointed by the ranking at number 8 as the lowest number 2 seed in the committee's reveal. If you look at our resume, 12-1 in the Big 12 at the time, atop what was consistently the number 1 conference in the land over the last decade or so. Clear number 3 in Ken Palm with our strongest net efficiency rating of the Sampson era. Number 1 seed in both Haslametrics and Bart Torvik. 4 losses, none bad, 3 of them in overtime, and the other by 5 to the number 1 team in the country. To me, that reads like a number 1 seed. But I was not surprised where we landed, especially when humans are involved in the process. 3 losses early during non-con when impressions are solidified was not good. The San Diego State University, and they're 41st at this point, loss was especially the weight around our neck, if you want to call it that. An exceptionally strong year by the SEC with Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, and even Missouri this year. Plus, having lost to their top 2 teams this season also cements an impression in the committee members' minds.
And A&M.
Yeah. Well, I don't consider them good, quite honestly.
The committee does.
I know they do, and they're wrong. An exceptionally weak year, like you mentioned, in the ACC, propping up Duke to no end. And they're going to have a 1 seed. There's no doubt. Tennessee's the only one of the top teams with a comparable loss to ours, Vandy, right, who's 47th. But even that loss was on the road. And finally, our schedule is admittedly backloaded. So when this came out, we were still yet to play Arizona, which we won. And we've still got ISU, at Tech, KU, and at Baylor. So the reality is, if we take care of business with only 1 loss along the final stretch, I believe we actually do get that coveted number 1 seed. Objectively looking at resumes, I thought we'd be number 5 or number 6 as one of the top 2 seeds competing with Tennessee. I did not expect us to be behind A&M, who had already lost to UCF, or Purdue, who had already lost to Penn State. Clear message from this season's committee was a heavy reliance on wins above bubble, whatever that means. And given our schedule is backloaded, it hurt us. Now things do tend to sort themselves out. Purdue is now on a 3-game losing streak after losing to Michigan, Wisconsin, and Michigan State. And A&M was just blasted by Mississippi State. Plus, teams like Tennessee, like you said, Tennessee, Florida, Bama, Auburn, they still have to play each other in this final stretch as well. But with this team, I would not have an issue or concern being a number 2 seed paired against any team other than Auburn. I'd really like to avoid Auburn, quite honestly. But anyone else, I think our team plays better, right, when they're feeling a little bit slighted. So a number 2 is fine for me. I believe we actually match up well versus Florida and Duke. And even though we've lost close ones to Bama over the past 3 years, I still like our chances this season, given how both teams have progressed over the season. But even in looking at how the committee placed the teams in this early reveal, I take that projected draw that they came out with in a second. I mean, paired with Florida as the number 1 seed in the West, which, Bill, you and I have mentioned as potentially overrated this season. Then Kentucky with Pope as the 4 seed with their number 68th defense, or, God forbid, Michigan as the number 3 with their double post offense. I love those matchups for us. Plus, being in Northern California in the West, that would allow me to actually attend those games in San Francisco. So I'm all for that, baby. Now, I also took some time to dig in deeper into the advanced analytics this week. And what you'll notice is that the three main advanced analytics sites have some differences in how teams are ranked. And I'll repeat, we're number 3 in KenPom, but we're actually number 1 overall in Haslametrics and Bart Torvik. And why is that? Well, there's a nuance between the sites when measuring adjusted offensive efficiency and adjusted defensive efficiency, where KenPom measures the whole game stats from beginning to end, while the other two sites only measure that period where they respectively deem the game is statistically still in doubt. And the result of that nuance, offensively, we're number 3 most efficient in the country, behind Auburn and Duke in Haslametrics. And defense, we're number 1 across the board with Haslametrics and Bart Torvik when that's taken into consideration. What it tells us is that this season, the two teams we theoretically should want to pair up against in our quadrant come tourney time, it's Bama and then Florida, where both, especially Bama, have racked up margin of victory after the game has been somewhat decided. So we'll see where it lands. But the bottom line is basically, if we take our business, maintain our adjusted offensive efficiency above 124, and we're above 125 at this point after ASU, we'll be ready for our best chance at a national championship run, even if we're a number 2 seed. So that's it for our 44th episode of the No Conference for Old Men podcast. And before we sign off today, just wanted to dedicate this episode to Chloe, our family Maltese of 15 and a half years that we lost on Valentine's Day. We do miss you, little girl. And with that, we do hope that you all enjoyed this episode. And again, would really appreciate it if folks would follow, subscribe, or collect our podcast, depending on your podcast platform of choice. We're also available via the Republic of Football podcast feed from the folks at Dave Campbell's Texas Football as the only basketball-centric podcast. We're at the GoCoogs.com website for those that prefer to digest the content that way. We appreciate the continued support from all. Also, please give us a follow on our Twitter account, No Conference for Old Men. Thank you all again for listening, and be on the lookout next week to download and listen as our next episode drops. Take care, everyone.